Hey, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk, and so we've got a new vinyl tag out. Alex at Motorik247 is giving us the experimental vinyl tag, so we can get out our more avant-garde recordings. So he gave us 8 questions, and I was able to answer all 8 questions, fortunately. And so the first question, he wanted something that featured improvisation. So of course, kind of the first thing that would kind of think you'd think of would be like jazz, especially if you have any free jazz in your collection. But I went with some African music. I went with Le Fil de Iligadad. So this was their debut album. So Fatou Sedigali is the guitar player. Alamanula Clooney is the singer. But where I'm really getting at is on side two, 10 Day takes up the entire side two of the record. And it was the two of them with some other women, kind of doing the traditional Tuareg style of music that the women in their group do. So the 10 Day is sort of a drum that's made out of like a pestle. There's a lot of chanting, and they kind of get together and they make some music. And so that's what I'm going to show for my improvisation. Um, Second prompt was something featuring some Moog synthesizer or synthesizer, Moog, however you want to pronounce it. And so I did the whole Discog search with the word Moog, and this Tangerine Dream that I got in my local record store day, um, stuff that nobody bought box. So this is Zeit by Tangerine Dream, double album, because it's a record store day one. It's on fancy orange vinyl. But of course, you've got a lot of synthesizer. Florian Frick of Popolva plays Moog synthesizer on Birth of Liquid Plagades or Plagades, however we are supposed to pronounce that. And so that is basically side one of this double album. So I probably won't be the only person that'll show Tangerine Dream as part of this tag. Um, Prompt number 3 is field recordings. So people who watch my channel know that one of the things I kind of like is Greek folk music. And so there was a man named Simon Karas who was a Greek musicologist, kind of specialized in Byzantine music especially, but his sort of his life work was making field recordings of folk music from all around the country. Apparently, they took place over from the 1920s up through the 1970s. And then in the 70s and 80s, the um, Society for National Music in Greece released a series of albums that would all focus on. This one focuses on the islands of Kassos and Karpathos, um, and then others would focus on other islands or other regions of the nation if it was someplace that was inland. You've got notes that are in both Greek and English on there. The Society for the Dissemination of National Music. And I happen to have 3 of these that I dug from a local indoor flea market for $1.99 each. I mean, these aren't like super valuable, but usually if you were going to go buy them on Discogs, you'd probably be paying between $10 and $20. I haven't bought any besides the 3 that I dug out. I really like. They all have these cool photos of people in traditional dress. I have unfortunately I've never been to either of these 2 islands, and so that's going to be my field recordings. Drone. I'm going to go ahead and show this recent album by Natural Information Society. And in this album, they had Evan Parker joining them. And so this was a double album. And so basically, you've got Joshua Abrams on the Juumbri, which is a sort of a uh, African bass. Harmonium and effects by Lisa Alvarado. Drums by Mikel Patrick Avery. Evan Parker on soprano sax. Jason Stein on bass clarinet. I had rated this as one of my favorite albums from last year. And so basically, the four sides are basically all one super long track, and there is definitely a lot of drone, a lot of very slow build to this music. The I mean, I'm not good at describing this sort of music, but kind of reading from the back here. The possibility of a never ending breath allows for the weaving of complex explorations of tonal possibility between harmonium, the jumbri, drum, and horn that leads to non conventional strategies of harmony and unity. So, along with the drone, this could have been used as improvisation as well. Um, Spoken word. And so I'm going to be showing this album again in an upcoming video that I haven't posted yet with some of my favorite recent buys. But this is Tanya Tagaq with Tongues. And so Tanya Tagaq is an Inuit from far, far northern Canada, Nunavut. And she kind of became known around 2014. She won the Polaris Award in Canada for her album Animism that featured the Inuit throat singing. There's a bit of it on this album as well, but this album's quite a bit different. It just came out a month or two ago. So you've got a lot of electronica. You've got a lot of spoken word parts, so fits this question. So she has certain songs where she's so to get across the message more clearly than when she's doing throat singing. We've got spoken word passages. I think some of them came from a book she wrote. So she's very much into Native rights in Canada, women's rights as well. And so a lot of this gets at the struggles of being an Inuit and of being a woman in general. Stuff about her being a mother, and so that's the spoken word. Processed instruments. So I went with Sonic Boom. So you've got Peter Kerber of Spaceman 3. And so this was an album that came out in 2020. A couple decades after he'd done another one under this name. And sort of the interesting thing about this one, as processed instruments, basically notice that Sonic Boom, instead of usually if you had an album where you collaborated with a lot of other musicians, you might have the list of this person played guitar on these tracks, and this person played drums, and this person played saxophone. He's listing all the different electronics and processing that he did. So all kinds of different modulators and synthesizers and harmonizers and vocoders. I'll hold it up again. I'm certainly not an expert in these. And then there's a couple people that are actually listed for providing some instruments as well, but it's mostly Peter Sonic Boom and working with a lot of these instruments, and a lot of these would be considered sort of dated in terms of electronica. And then we have the Nurse with Wound list. And I'll admit that over half of the artists on the Nurse with Wounds list I've never heard of. And even a lot of the ones I've heard of, I don't have stuff of. Most of the people I have stuff of off the Nurse with Wounds list are the most famous of those. I decided to show Sonny Sherock, Ask the Ages. So this was Sonny's last album before he passed away. So this was recorded in 1991. So obviously this was recorded after the making of the Nurse with Wound list, which which I believe came out in like 1979. But so he's a pretty cool jazz guitarist. And then finally, the toy instrument. So I'm going to show, I made a video about this band last year, Ed's Redeeming Qualities, More Bad Times. So this album was from 1990. And so Ed's Redeeming Qualities was this alternative folk band. And they were noted for their very childlike lyrics and simple instrumentation. Unfortunately, this album was after one of the original members, Dom Leone, had passed away of cancer. But you have, I believe it was his cousin Dan. Dan plays ukulele and is the main vocalist. The Nino Perota, who's the percussionist, does like bongos and a shaker, which is rice in a coffee can. Carrie Bradley, she plays a violin and a xylophone and sings. And in a sense, they're kind of like a toy rock band because instead of having like big, loud electric guitars with a Marshall stack and a big Neil Peart drum kit, you've got a ukulele, a little tiny acoustic guitar, and you got bongos, and you're shaking your rice in the can, and maybe tinkling on the xylophone, and a very childlike lyrics. But when I say childlike, I really mean it in the best sense of the term. Very charming in its innocence and naivete. Kind of like the good part of being a child. So I'm going to use that as my toy instrument. And so hopefully you guys like this. Almost 12 minutes, so I'm going to cut it off here.